After losing their sixth straight game last night, the New York Mets finally return home, and they will play their next 9 games at Citi Field. If they're going to salvage this season, they got to do it right now.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've been covering the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. It's the only podcast that covers the Mets 7 days a week throughout the regular season. If you want to find some of my written work, you do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Well, you could not have written a worse script for how the Mets series is going to end against the Phillies. It's just the series as a whole. Let's actually do it that way. You open up the series, you get a really well-pitched game. Nolan McLean, solid through 5 1/3, gives up 1 run. Your bullpen, great behind him. They don't give up anything. You lose 1-0. 2 games in the middle, you get blown out. Final game, your offense finally wakes up for the first time in this series. They jump all over Jesus Luzardo. Francisco Lindor leadoff single. Juan Soto follows it up with a single of his own. The two of them double steal. Soto now at 32 stolen bases. My prediction that he was going to get to 40. Looking pretty good so far, but if it's a 40-40 season in a year where the Mets don't make the playoffs, it's going to be held in disregard by Mets fans. But regardless, you got runners at second and third, nobody out. Pete Alonso strikes out, but Mark Vientos picks him up, gets a base hit. Brandon Nimmo gets a base hit. 2 runs come across, 1 on each single. Stalling Marte, who I was wondering before the game, are they still going to roll Marte out there when he hasn't been swinging a good bat? Didn't throughout the game, but nobody did after this first inning. In that spot, though, runners on, RBI double drives in 2. All of a sudden, Mets are up 4-0. All right, they're chilling, right? They're going to win this game. David Peterson's on the mound. It's going to be fine. That first inning ends with Jeff McNeil hitting a line drive right back at Jesus Luzardo, right into his breadbasket, catches it, turns around, doubles off Marte at second. So, all right, he escaped, but they're going to keep this up, right? They're going to be able to hit Luzardo, and David Peterson starts off the game, puts up a couple zeros, but as the game goes on, Peterson starts to unravel, and Luzardo just gets better and better and better. Jesus Luzardo, after giving up what it was, like 5 hits to the first 6 batters, Lindor, Soto, Nimmo, Marte, so 4 hits to the first 5 batters. He doesn't give up anything else the rest of the game. Not only was he dominant, he wasn't just good. He wasn't just dominant. He was perfect. Perfect after the Phillies were. They threw 8 perfect innings after the Mets scored 4 in the first. How does that even happen? 8 perfect. Not a walk, not a single, not a nothing. Luzardo strikes out 10. 1 in the first to Alonso, 9 after that over the next 7 innings. I believe he struck out the final 3 that he faced, but regardless, completely dominates the Mets. And then in the 9th inning, Joan Duran finishes it off, strikes out the side, goes through Soto, Alonso, and Vientos. I mean, that's more than offensive futility. That's just pathetic. And look, to be honest, Jesus Luzardo was nasty. And the Mets saw great pitching on this road trip. I mean, they really did. You look at Hunter Green, Brady Singer, all of the lefties the Phillies had. Even Aaron Nola had a good start. I mean, they really did face some tough arms. Not going to get any easier tonight. Jacob deGrom coming to town. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But, yeah, the teams the Mets played really did put it to them. But at the same time, you got to do something. You got to find some way to get the job done, and the Mets just couldn't do it. And on the other side, you could have won on the back of 1 4-run rally. You absolutely could have. David Peterson looked good early. Gave up a leadoff double to Harrison Bader because, of course, he did. Bader just destroyed the Mets in this series. Struck out Kyle Schwarber, though. Then he gets Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto to ground out. So gets through that first inning and strands Bader in scoring position. Gives up a leadoff single in the second, gets a double play ball, which prevents him from giving up a run when he allows a double to Edmundo Sosa, gets a ground out, strands another runner in scoring position. Third inning, all he allows is a 2-out single to Kyle Schwarber. He struck out the other 3 batters that he faced in the inning, including Barry Bonds, a.k.a. Harrison Bader. Or maybe he's more like Tony Gwynn is a better comp for Bader lately. Just going to hit 450 against the Mets. And Bryce Harper. So an impressive inning for Peterson to get 3 strikeouts against some good hitters. Fourth inning, he issues a 1-out walk. And then he hangs one to Otto Kemp, and Otto Kemp hits a 2-run homer. But Peterson responded to that. Gets pissed, strikes out the next 2 batters on 6 pitches. In the 5th inning, he gives up a leadoff single, gets a flyout, picks up another strikeout of Kyle Schwarber, but Bryce Harper gets him for a double that scores a 3rd run. He then strikes out JT Realmuto to strand Harper. I thought overall David Peterson pitched pretty well, but at the end of the day, he's at 86 pitches through 5 innings, and the Mets go to the bullpen. Now, in hindsight, you could say maybe just keep Peterson in. Couldn't have been worse than what happened because Reed Garrett completely blew up. But in hindsight, you might say that. The other side of it, he had Nick Castellanos leading off the inning who mashed his lefties, Otto Kemp, who homered off him in the game, batting second, and Edmundo Sosa, who I think doubled off him, right? We just talked about that double in the second inning, double to Sosa. So guys that were hitting him hard that game, all lefty mashers. It makes sense to go to your bullpen. Now, who do you pitch in that spot? Again, operating in hindsight, we could say they should have gone to Tyler Rogers in the 6th. Get those 3 righties out. But they went to Reed Garrett because the plan was go to Reed Garrett. You'll get towards the top of the lineup with all the lefties. You go to Brooks Raley. You then go to Tyler Rogers, and you close it out with Edwin Diaz. I'm sure that's how Carlos Mendoza was mapping it out. I got a 1-run lead. I got to get 12 outs from my bullpen, who are the 4 best arms I can trust, and he went to them. But Reed Garrett was awful. He hung sweepers to Nick Castellanos and Otto Kemp. They both doubled. That ties the game. Gets a ground out, issues a walk before picking up his first strikeout. He's an out away from getting through the inning, but Harrison Bader's up. So what happens? Bader gets a hit up the middle. Mets killer strikes again. Phillies take a lead. And then Brooks Raley comes on for the lefties. He walks Schwarber, gives up a base hit to Harper. All of a sudden, 6-4 Phillies. Gets a pop-up to get out of the inning, but the damage is done. Tyler Rogers, Edwin Diaz, they did not allow a hit or a walk in the final 2 innings pitched for the Mets. Didn't matter at that point. The game was lost. So now the Mets are sitting 1.5 games up on the Reds and the Giants, who did not play on Thursday going into this weekend. They got to do much better at home than they did on the road, and they have to try to build a cushion because they're going to end the season on the road. And I don't feel very confident about what's going to happen when they go to Wrigley Field. And I feel somehow even worse about what's going to happen in Miami against the Marlins for the final 3 games of this season. This team still very much controls their destiny because you know what? They've been great at home all season. And on paper, they should be able to handle the Marlins to close out the year. But that's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts trying to get through this final slate. And they've been a bad baseball team for months, and it just seems that they can't get out of their way. And again, Jacob deGrom comes back to Citi Field for his long-awaited return tonight. So I want to talk about deGrom in the next segment before we do a series preview because I think it's pretty interesting to just see how things have unfolded there over the last few years. So we're going to talk about deGrom here in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by Nutrafol. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look because Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people, and it's not just hype. This is a supplement clinically tested that targets the root causes of thinning and shedding with a proactive approach. Whether you're at work, out with friends, or even just getting ready in the morning, Nutrafol gives you more confidence in your daily routine. And you can feel good about knowing that Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thicker, stronger hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering Locked On MLB listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB. If you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button to help us get closer to our next goal of 15,000 subscribers. We're about 500 away, and I would love to get there by the end of the season. Really do appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. Jacob deGrom will return to the Citi Field mound tonight for the first time since he won Game 2 of the wild card round back in 2022. Now, he returns after missing pretty much 2 years with Tommy John surgery, but this season he has been fully healthy. He's going to make his 28th start, and he has pitched to a 2.78 ERA with 169 strikeouts and 155 and 2/3 innings pitched. Now, this is not the guy that we knew before the injury. He is not as dominant as he was when he won back-to-back Cy Youngs. And even further, what we saw in 2021 and 2022, where he was averaging 99 on his fastball, 92 on his slider, and was the best pitcher on the planet by a mile. He had reached a level in those final 2 years that was even better than the 2 Cy Young seasons, to a point where if he was towing the rubber, he was unhittable. Still to this day, and I think probably forever, nothing will be more dominant than what deGrom did in the first half of 2021, dragging that team to first place in the NL East. He pitched to a 1.08 ERA. I think he hit like 326 or something crazy, because that was the last year the pitcher still hit, and had some really key RBIs to help the Mets win some of those games. He was just an MVP in that first half. He goes down, and I think that started all of what ended up resulting in the divorce between deGrom and the Mets, because I think there was maybe some back and forth on the medicals, whether he should get Tommy John, whether he shouldn't, maybe some difference of opinions. We'll never know what happened behind closed doors, but something changed. And 2022, he comes back. He almost doesn't even feel part of that team, but was still great down the stretch. And he was the one guy that won a playoff game for the Mets. And then he hits free agency and he walks. And in retrospect, after he signed, it became apparent, well, maybe deGrom never wanted to be a Met any longer. Maybe deGrom liked the idea of going to Texas, where he didn't have to deal with the media, didn't have to deal with the fan pressure. He got to, get back in an environment similar to how he grew up in the middle of Florida, had a lot of lands, not have to pay income tax, all that good stuff. And the team that he picked won a World Series the first year he was there. He just wasn't able to be part of it because he went down after 6 starts, needing the Tommy John that we all thought he needed for a long time when he was finishing off his tenure with the Mets. Now that he's back, though, he is not throwing 99 on average with his fastball, but he's averaging 97.5 miles per hour in his fastball at 37 years old with a 90-mile-per-hour slider. He's using his changeup a little bit more, particularly against lefties, than he did in the past, because in the past, he just needed the 2 pitches. Now he's got a third one of these used a little more frequently. He'll flip in a curveball every now and again. But batters are hitting under 200 against all 3 of his pitches, and they're slugging under 400 against all of his pitches. He is still every bit the ace that a team wants to go into the playoffs. Right now, he's in the top 10 in ERA. He's in the top 10 in strikeout rate, and the top 10 in batting average against. And he's 3rd in Major League Baseball in WHIP, which is walks and hits over innings pitched. That's what a pitcher can control more than anything else, right? Limiting base runners. Only 2 guys that are better, likely the 2 guys who are going to win the Cy Young, Tarek Skubal and Paul Skeens. You look at the American League Cy Young race, deGrom's not going to win it. That's going to be Skubal. And if it's not Skubal, it's because Crochet makes some incredible push over the final 2 weeks. Hunter Brown probably gets 3rd. He's got a 2.25 ERA, leading the Astros. That's across 167 and 2/3 innings pitched. And he's soon to join Skubal and Crochet as the 3rd pitcher in the American League to get the 200 strikeouts. He's 10 away. deGrom probably not going to get the 200 strikeouts, but he's going to finish in the top 5 in Cy Young voting, I think. And you look at his contract, he has a clause in there. If he finishes with 1 top 5 Cy Young finish, a $20 million club option for 2028 turns into a $30 million club option. If he does it 3 times, it finishes in the top 5 for the next 2 years, he would then have a $37 million club option. But also, if he pitches 160 innings in 2027, Jacob deGrom's 2028 option becomes a player option, which would allow him to invest, again, $37 million more on top of the $185 million he has cashed in or will cash in by the end of the 5-year deal, which leads me to this. Did the New York Mets blow it with Jacob deGrom? Should Steve Cohen and the regime at the time done a better job to ingratiate themselves with deGrom? Should they have extended him? Because Zach Scott went on a podcast recently, and Zach Scott was, remember, the GM for the Mets in 2021, and he said there was some dialogue about a contract extension that year, and they really just shot down deGrom's agent when it came to the contract structure that was offered over. They just didn't really entertain it at all because they thought it was an overpay or it was too much, or maybe they were concerned about the medicals or whatever it was. They did not go there. And it ended up being a contract, as Scott would say later, that was very similar to the one that he signed. Pretty much, it was the exact blueprint of what he ended up signing. So the Mets had an opportunity to keep deGrom in a Mets uniform for his entire career if they just said yes in 2021. But they didn't. And now we have to look back at it with hindsight. And I think as soon as everything happened, right? deGrom signs with the Rangers, the Mets pivot. They signed Justin Verlander, 2 years, $86.7 million, coming off a Cy Young. Even though he was 40, he felt pretty good about it. And then deGrom goes down with Tommy John. Justin Verlander was pitching well. Everyone was saying Mets made the right call. They did not have dead money on their books. They knew something was up, and they were right. Well, now let's look at it. Jacob deGrom was essentially dead money on the Rangers' books for the first 2 years of that deal. Got paid $70 million across those 2 years. Made 9 starts. Justin Verlander made 16 starts with the Mets, pitched to a 3.15 ERA in 2023, but it was part of a disastrous season for the Mets, where they had a fire sale and they traded Justin Verlander. How much money do you think they paid Justin Verlander in 2023 and 2024 when deGrom was collecting $70 million from the Rangers? $61.67 million is how much the Mets paid Verlander. So not that far off. Yeah, it's still $8.33 million. Not nothing, but not that far off as far as money saved for a guy, comparatively, where you really got nothing from Verlander that amounted towards winning. But you got the prospects. You got Ryan Clifford and Drew Gilbert. Drew Gilbert flipped for Tyler Rogers at the deadline. Ryan Clifford still in the system, 2 home runs away from being the first Mets prospect since Pete Alonso to hit 30 home runs in a season. Jury's still out, but that still seems like a piece that could be one of your building blocks for the future. All fine and well. Let me ask you this, though. If at the trade deadline, the Mets could have gotten Jacob deGrom back for Ryan Clifford and Drew Gilbert, do you think Tyler Rogers would be on the Mets? Do you think the Mets would have pulled the trigger on that trade immediately? The answer is, of course they would. Which tells you now, in retrospect, the Mets probably should have extended deGrom in 2021 no matter what it cost. Because guess what? If they had Jacob deGrom right now, they'd be in such a better position. And it seems like deGrom, with now a brand new elbow, very well could be one of the best pitchers in baseball again for the next 3 seasons. And you could have had his entire career in a Mets uniform, and you could have had him on teams with Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto in years where you should be a perennial contender. Can't, woulda, coulda, shoulda it. You never know. The Mets could have done everything to ingratiate themselves to deGrom, and he could have decided to leave anyway. But again, Zach Scott saying that a contract extension was submitted to them from deGrom's side in 2021, and the Mets turned it down, tells you that there was an opportunity at one point in time to keep him. And as somebody who absolutely loved watching Jacob deGrom pitch, and I would say probably in my fandom from the guys I have watched, David Wright won for me, Jacob deGrom probably 2. And I can never sort of remove my childhood fandom of David Wright, but I'm always someone that gravitates more towards pitching. So in some ways, Jacob deGrom kind of is my favorite Met that I got to watch. And it's going to be weird to see him pitching against the Mets for the first time tonight. But I hope they still play simple man. I still want that moment. I still want the goosebumps, even if it's in a different way. And it's going to be fun to watch him go up against a 22-year-old Jonah Tong. So we're going to preview the series next, but it is interesting to see how everything has gone over these last couple of years, where it went from the Mets made the right call on Jacob deGrom to now, I think they kind of blew it. but that's just me. We'll go through the series, though, in just a minute. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. If your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it's player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, it's the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. And I'll tell you what, you also can bet on the Mets right now, or you can bet against the Mets. I told you on a recent show, my brother-in-law has been betting against the Mets to hedge his happiness. If the Mets win, he's happy. If they lose, he wins a bet. And he dropped the strategy tonight. I don't know what he was thinking. He said, it's like when you're playing roulette and you just keep hitting on red, you think at some point it's got to be black. So he went the other way with it, and he regrets it now. So if you're ready to play, maybe bet against the Mets because you think the spiral is going to continue, or maybe bet on the Mets because you believe that they're going to find a way at home, or maybe you're just looking at your NFL action on Sunday. Download the FanDuel app by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place that first $5 bet for $300 in bonus bets if you win. If you're an everydayer that always tunes into the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. It's our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks in the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways and get a live graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now, the Texas Rangers are coming into town hot. They just swept the Brewers, of all teams, at home. They beat the Astros at home prior to that. And if you go back and you look at what they've done lately, since August 22nd, they are the hottest team in baseball. They are 14-4 over the last 18 games. Prior to that, they had lost 14 of their previous 21, but then they turned it on, and now they are right in the thick of the playoff race. They have a chance still to win the AL West. How have they done it? Well, they have been a really good offensive team during this stretch, which they have not been for most of the season. They've scored the third most runs in Major League Baseball. The Mets still lead the league during this same stretch, but they can't win baseball games, which is crazy. The Rangers are suddenly top 5 in home runs during this period, and their pitching continues to be outstanding. They're third best in ERA, and their starters have a 2.53 ERA during this 18-game stretch. You've gotten great performances by Jacob deGrom. The addition at the deadline, Merrill Kelly, he would have meant a lot to this Mets rotation in retrospect. He has been awesome since coming over in that trade. You also have Jack Leiter, who has been really good. So they have a really loaded rotation. Even Patrick Corbin's had some good starts mixed in there. Went 8 scoreless against the Angels, but he's also had some clunkers, and we will see him in this series. Let's go through the lineup, though, for the Rangers. Wyatt Langford has been their best player and their hottest hitter. 392 on base percentage. Adolis Garcia was swinging it well, but now he's on the IL. Jake Berger's been pretty good. Josh Young, Michael Hellman has been solid. So they've got a team full of guys that you're not going to really know too much about because Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, and Adolis Garcia, their 3 sort of biggest star players as far as name value are all on the injured list, but the young guys have been getting the job done. Pitching matchups. Jacob deGrom versus Jonah Tong. It's a fun one. deGrom at 37, returning to the Citi Field mound for the first time since 2022, and Jonah Tong making his second start at Citi. We'll have a lot of fan support. It's going to be a wild atmosphere. What a big game for him to get to pitch in, and it's going to be cool to see how he does in that moment. The Mets are all relying on the kids this weekend. It's Tong, Sproat, and McLean. Sproat going in game 2 against Patrick Corbin. Corbin has a 6.34 ERA over his last 7 starts. So, yes, like I mentioned, he had a good start mixed in there, but there's also been a lot of bad. And this Mets lineup has seen a ton of Patrick Corbin for all those years that he was pitching out that big contract he signed with the Nationals. Pete Alonso has feasted on Patrick Corbin. 5 home runs, a 347 average in his career, and an OPS of 1.164. Francisco Lindor, 3 homers and 841 OPS. Mark Vientos, 8 at-bats, 4 extra base hits, 3 doubles and a triple. Brandon Nimmo, a career 279 hitter against Corbin with a few homers. Starlin Marte, a career 310 hitter against Corbin. Now, I think the roadmap for the Mets winning this series, is probably through Saturday and Sunday with Patrick Corbin and Jacob Latz going on Sunday against Nolan McLean. I think the first game is going to be the toughest to get, but if the Mets can grab it, that's going to be such a huge momentum shift. And then hopefully you can just fall back into old habits and beat up on Patrick Corbin. All of a sudden, you've won a series and you got McLean going for the final game. That's how you can turn the momentum like that. But the other side of it is Jacob deGrom dominates you. Jonah Tong has a blow up. You lose that game. Patrick Corbin baffles everybody and has a good start. Now, granted, he's been much better this year than he was with the Nationals. But again, I remind you, the last 7 starts, ERA over 6, and the career numbers with all these guys have been so good against Corbin. The only guy who hasn't hit him is his former teammate, Juan Soto. Only had 7 at-bats, but I don't believe he's registered a hit. So not that that's going to absolutely continue, but just one other thing to note. And then the final game, again, McLean will be on the mound, so that's the great thing for the Mets. Jacob Latz will be going. He is new to the rotation, was pitching out of the bullpen all of last year, and for most of this year, this will be his 4th turn in the rotation. They've been adding to his pitch count, so about 15 to 20 pitches between each turn. He's been adding on. His last start, he got up to 84, so he should be a full-go starting pitcher at this point, and he's been good during this stretch in the rotation, has not given up more than 2 runs in any of those starts. The first one, it was 3 1/3 scoreless, so that was the beginning of trying to get stretched out, but since then, he's pitched into the 5th inning each time. Actually, the last 2 times, he's pitched into the 6th and then has gotten 1 out away from finishing the 6th, and again, not allowing more than 2 runs in any of those starts. The Mets got to figure out how to hit lefties after a terrible week of trying against the Phillies. Personally, I'm really sick of the lefty-righty stuff. I understand that Starling Marte is supposed to be your lefty masher, and he did double in the first inning against Luzardo. With that said, the Mets are a better team with Brett Baty in the lineup, and he has not been able to buy a start against lefty. He was never a platoon guy as a prospect. He always hit lefties and righties. So you end up in this situation where you start to pigeonhole a guy into not being able to hit lefties because you don't let him get exposure, and you're running out Mark Vientos at third base when you could just put Vientos at DH and Baty at third, and I think you have a better team. We'll see if the Mets keep going with Marte, with Vientos at third and Baty at second, or not playing Baty because they want to go with Acuna at second, which I get and I also don't. Get Brett Baty in some of these games. It's like, you just play your best players. Play your best players and see what happens. That's where I'm at with that. At the end of the day, you look at this homestand. If the Mets stick with the 6-man rotation, which I think is a big if right now, they're not going to commit to anything. They have an off day on Monday, and they very well can change course with what might be the plan right now. But if they did stay with the 6-man and they went Manaea, Holmes, Peterson against the Padres, I have no confidence in that series. But then it would be the kids again against the Nationals. So maybe the thought process could be, if the Mets decide to go 6 for this homestand, would be make your hay against the Rangers and the Nationals. If that's the strategy, they better do it. So if that's the plan, hopefully the Mets finally start to hit this weekend. They get some good performance from the kids. They win a series, and then maybe you can steal one against the Padres and beat up on the Nationals and set yourself up for that final week of the season. But they're going to have to go now. It's 15 games. That's all we got left to watch. 9 of them are at home. You know Citi Field's going to be packed, particularly tonight for this pitching matchup. Hopefully they can get the job done and finally stop the bleeding. One last thing before we close the show, your now daily update on the minor league playoffs. The St. Lucie Mets lost. They had a pretty ugly game, 4 errors, and gave up 7 runs in the first 3 innings. Lost the game 7-2. Game 3 will be tonight. Winner will advance to the championship round. In Brooklyn, they're already in the championship. They swept their playoff series. They won tonight 4-1. Joel Diaz, really strong start, 21-year-old righty who's pitched to a 3.80 ERA this season. In a big game, he went 6 2/3 without allowing a run, gave up just 2 hits and 2 walks, struck out 2. You had Haas Brewer come on, walked the bases loaded, but then he got out of it. And then I think it was like Dakota Hawkins who pitched the final 2 innings and gave up just a run, I believe. So regardless, it was Dakota Hawkins. The Brooklyn Cyclones are now in the championship round of the playoffs. They're going to play a championship series against the Hub City Spartan Burgers, which is the high affiliate of the Texas Rangers. So they will see them on Monday in Brooklyn, and then it'll be on Sunday it will be in Brooklyn, and then Monday they'll have a day off. Then they'll go to Hub City and play on Tuesday and Wednesday to finish off that series and their season, potentially as champions. We'll see what happens there. I'll keep you updated on future episodes of the show. That's going to be all, though, for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Quick little programming note. There will be no postcast this weekend. Chris Schubert, our host of the Locked On Mets postcast, I believe it's his bachelor party he's out of town for, so congrats to him on the future nuptials, but he's going to be out. I'm not going to be available to do the postcast. I will have another show for you on Saturday morning, and then on Sunday, I will try to come on for actually a postcast on Sunday. I'm not going to have a show for you in the morning, but I'll explain more of that on tomorrow's show. Anyway, that's going to be all for this edition of Locked On Mets. Appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Hit that subscribe button if you are watching on YouTube to help us get to the next goal of 15,000 subscribers. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Thank you again for making Locked On Mets your first listen or first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, check out Locked On MLB Game at the show that'll take you around all the action in Major League Baseball with insight from our local experts and league-wide experts that'll take you through all the games. You can find Locked On MLB Game Night on the Locked On MLB YouTube channel as well as the Locked On MLB podcast feed.